There's an old saying that goes, "Who loves danger dies in it," which is literally the opposite of the essence of every fantasy tale. Who never tries fails. Something I love about epic fantasy novels is the thin line that characters need to face between trying to overcome themselves but within their own limits. Succeeding is not granted. You open a book, you start a chapter, and you read about two characters walking through some uncharted ways, and you think, are they fodder for the swamp beasts, or do they kinda know what they're doing? Hi everyone, how's it going? As you see, today we're making a very small yet realistic scene. I wanted to recreate, or to see if I could, a moment frozen in time. Let's start already. As we already have the sketch and the vibe, it's time for deciding the measurements of the whole scene. I imagine this is a small part of a massive structure in a completely ruined and forgotten urban area that no longer exists. Once vibrant and full of people busy with their lives, but now completely swamped and dark. An ideal hideout for all sorts of sinister creatures, and probably a shortcut that looks like a bad idea. Because I'm not entirely sure of how everything ties together, I want to make first the main structure of the scene, the stone bridge / access to somewhere. I want to be meticulous, so I'll waste some time by first drawing the shapes on the polystyrene with a pencil, making sure that everything fits according to my preconception of it, and if it doesn't, I'll be able to adapt before it's too late. I want the structure to look like a solid work even if completely eroded by the passing of time, so I'm going to try to focus on that by carving the stones on two different sheets, because that will give me some more room of maneuver, and only afterwards I'll glue both pieces to the main structure. One full and two unfinished arches, crowned with some eroded stairs. Where did they used to lead? What always amazed me with fantasy books is how every corner can hide multiple possibilities, multiple stories. Once I'm happy with the result, I will work with a hobby knife and a sculpting tool, making the gaps and widening them. As we're trying to simulate heavy erosion, I'll try to make this step as unequal as possible throughout the entire structure. I think that it still looks quite okay, and I want some decadence here, so I will gently and carefully press on the individual stones with foil paper or the knife itself. But be careful, because if you're too harsh, the stones might come out. Which is not the end of the world, because that might give a nice vibe, or you can glue it back anyway, but just saying. Of course, we're missing the painting part, and everything goes primed in black. You might think that this is a way of making my life harder if later on the stones will have some pale colors, but I need all crevices deep black to simulate the complete lack of light. To paint the stones, I'm gonna use three colors that I'm gonna be mixing to different degrees: a tan yellow, a bluish green, and a bluish yellow. Using a pure yellow to soften the transitions between greens and blues. I treat each stone separately, and I don't pay attention to the wide range that the palette currently has, because everything is gonna be flattened and soft down later on. I'm not going to go in details, because first, I accidentally didn't record this part, but also because it was such a nice process not to just dry brush everything and taking the time to paint each rock separately, that I think I will go in detail in another video. So let's leave it for now and start working on the ground part. Let's cut our foundation from some chipboard and start. In retrospective, it would have been better to glue some XPS foam on it and not to start building from the chipboard, but it's fine. In the center, we're gonna place a big chunk of whatever. It's going to be covered, so it can be anything. I'd rather use something that wouldn't up thrown away, but if you have spare polystyrene, of course, go for that. As I don't, I'm just gonna completely cover it with my mix of modeling compound. There's a video where I show how I make it, but if you think it's best I briefly repeat myself in every video with details like this, please let me know in the comments. Just cover everything and try to have some flat surfaces where you want to work later on. They don't have to be smooth, but it will be easier if they are flat. As you can see, I regretted the design I made. I want the stone structure to be not just the main thing, but kind of the only thing. And a lot of land or rocks around it would ruin a bit that feeling. It's fine, it's not the end of the world. You don't like something turns out different in reality than what you imagine, just change it. So, a smaller structure as base, and then we're gonna continue adding directly the rocks that, as you see, I created with some plaster. Carefully filling the gaps with the compound, adding some tree bark that I collected, and making sure that the scene will make sense altogether. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time with painting the base, because most of it's gonna be covered by vegetation. So I'm gonna prime everything in black with a spray, because I found a very cheap one, and I'm going to splash the base colors everywhere. It's only after I have put all the vegetation that I will know for sure which areas will be darker and lighter. Same with the stone bridge, by the way. And how am I going to get a swampy vibe? Well, lots of vegetation, both vertically and horizontally, water accents with the help of epoxy, and whatever is not covered in water or vegetation, well, just pure rock it is. The idea behind the scene is that while in greater days people were going through this structure above, that is no longer possible. It's rather below the only accessible path, if there is one that deserves a name. First, the vertical vegetation, very thin sticks or something that resembles it will do. Don't worry if you're using PVA glue like I am, because it's gonna be hidden by the climbing plant vegetation. And if not, it can be painted. But also moss, some diluted PVA glue in specific areas, and then sprinkle the sawdust over it. Don't worry about excess, as whatever is not caught by the glue will fall. And finally, the horizontal vegetation. It's very easy, just cord of some natural material, and you can find it everywhere. Cut it of different sizes and make it more or less abundant. My only comment would be, if you don't own an airbrush, and you can find some decent ones for a small price, it's true that your vegetation palette won't be very diverse, and perhaps it would be best to just buy some already made. However, the ones that can be easily painted are those made of a sponge, and any ink or diluted paint will do the job. I will also add previous visitors of the scene on top of the bridge, as I imagine this is how these monsters would work with adventurers. We're almost done. I don't like making super long videos, so I will not go in detail with the minis that I'm kit bashing and altering more or less to fit the needs of the scene. Some Age of Sigmar Chaotic Beast and old Warhammer Fantasy leftovers will do. I think an airbrush is a great tool, as I said, and it can allow you to achieve fantastic results. For instance, if I would like to make a light effect in this diorama, it would be very painful to go through every single detail, a real struggle. However, with some greenish desaturated yellow, I can highlight all the side of the base hit by the light, making a clear separation, and with a mix of red and dark blue ink, do the same on the other side. And of course, the same process with the bridge structure. It's time to glue the bridge and to see if there is any gap that I miscalculated. We're almost done, and therefore it's time to place one of the locals on the bridge. I really like its dynamic pose. And also our adventurer. It doesn't come with a bridle for the horse, so I just drill the hand and pass a thin cord through it. I didn't include any of the takes where I once again proved that superglue works best on fingers. What an amazing feature! But that's it. What's left is to pour epoxy, and before I do that, I'll place some plexiglass around it. This is where a layer of XPS foam between the chipboard and the main structure will have helped, as I said at the beginning, so perhaps not every angle is a potential spilling risk. Some hot glue will do to seal if you manage to cover every spot, which is rarely the case for me, so put something below the diorama and let's start pouring some resin. As always, mix both components in a correct ratio, stirring with patience and pouring. Only after you're 100% sure that the structure you built to contain the resin is done properly. And let it cure. The only difference is that I'm doing it in 2 steps. Pouring a mix more opaque first, and then a second one with much fewer pigment, because I really want to simulate depth in most areas. I really like how the resin flows. Now let's take the plexiglass out. It's a great choice to use with resin because it comes out very easy without leaving any trace on it. It's looking great. Let's add some water features with some gloss PVA glue and also with the help of a needle drop will make the water feel more swampy. And here it is. I love how it all came out. Of course, there are things that could be further improved, but at least to me it really feels that this polystyrene, sand and glue came to life. And that this poor fella is about to have some rough times. What do you think? How real do you think it looks? I'd love to see your thoughts in the comments. I hope you liked this video. See you in the next, and remember, it wasn't just foam, it was also a bridge.